may understand that for me as a German, it's very difficult to see that we are some minutes behind schedule. I want to be minutes. So my decision as the conference chair is that we don't cut the program and that we don't want to cut the time for discussion, because that's your time for discussion. We will cut lunch for 10 minutes or something like that. No, we find a way how to deal with that. And now everything is prepared, and therefore it's just my pleasure to welcome the session chairs. I may say, therefore, Dr. Kempal from USFDA. She is for the directorate in the Office of Generic Drugs. Is that better? Okay. So it's my pleasure, Dr. to have you here, in particular because she is also member of the International Scientific Advisory and Training Committee of the Global Bioequivalence Harmonization Initiative. We know us since many, many years. It's always a pleasure for me to meet you. And there is a second session chair, and that is Ian Dabas, Director for Public Relations, Jordan FDA. So, waiting for her. She's coming. I don't see her. But Michael, probably you can already start. Yeah, wherever you like.
So, good morning, everyone. And I'm Nilüfer Kempal. I'm with the USFDA, and with me co-chairing this session is Dr. Hayam Dabas, who is from the Jordan FDA, and jointly we'll be sharing this session. So, welcome to the first session of this symposium, which is actually the fourth symposium. So, congratulations to you all for your continued efforts towards regional harmonization. It's impressive. All right, so the first session is on field bioequivalence studies and consequences. We have four presentations here of approximately about 30 minutes each, which will be followed by a discussion session which Dr. Henning Bloom will be moderating. And we have requested the speakers to finish a little early so that we have a couple of time for just a couple of questions after each speaker has finished. And I also have a request for the people in the audience over here. So we would like you all to stay engaged and actually participate in the Q&A, the question and answer session. So hopefully my part is here that you guys are not here just because your supervisor asked you to attend. It's because you want to learn and you want to contribute to the success of each of these sessions and in the symposium. And I believe most of us are scientists in this room. And for us, what drives us and what gives us the energy is we have different perspectives. We have different scientific perspectives. We debate the issues, and then we come to a consensus. So that's what drives us. And I hope that I see that energy that you can show us during your Q&A sessions. So looking forward to that. So with that, we'll start with the first presenter. Our first speaker here is Dr. Anders Fullskam. He is the consultant and the auditor of Fullskam Pharma. I hope I'm saying this correctly. Yeah, and he will be sharing his perspective on the aberrant values in VE and how to deal with them. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Fullskam.
Thank you, Nilüfer. Hello again all. It's a great pleasure for me to be in Amman again. It's my first time in Amman this year, and I absolutely love being here. So thanks to the organizers, thanks to Dr. Rahab, to Mohammed Khalil and all the nice colleagues from Athena for setting up this conference, and thanks to Henning for all his work with the program and to everybody else involved. I'm simply delighted to be here. So I'll be giving 2 talks today, and first I'm going to talk a little bit about values in PE, in bioequivalence trials, and how we deal with them. And this is all about testing, failing, and repeating. Now, I've been a consultant for 10 years in the bioequivalence field. There are a lot of companies interested in repeating studies. It's always about something fails, and then you want to get rid of the subjects, and then you want to also maybe repeat the trial. So all that may be unnecessary, and do get that right. I am not going to talk about statistical approaches to detecting outliers. There are so many presentations in the public domain, Lund's outlier test, Ox, and other stuff. There are all sorts of methods available, and I don't want to deal specifically with the pros and cons of these methods or how to approach it with the various designs for bioequivalence. All I want to say is it's a good idea to have some wording in a protocol about dealing with outliers or downsides. It's not a very good idea to come back to the regulator after a crisis scientific advice. I'm trying to argue for removal of subjects when nothing was in the protocol, nothing was in the SOP. This is usually a very strong. Now there's this nasty word about it. It is something that is deviating from the unusual or natural, tired, atypical, abnormal, and then there's also, I also found the word neurotic in that definition. And this may be a little bit descriptive of what is sometimes going on in the industry. We don't like outliers. I can see a hand there. Raise the sound. So this must be a question for the technicians of that to address the sound. Now, apparent values. Values that are funky or somehow unusual. We see them every time. But when they are covered in guidelines, it's only a certain type of wording they use. And this is typically of subjects that don't resemble other subjects. But we see apparent values in terms of genetics, statistics, bioanalysis, and then overall results. So let's look at how FDA wants to deal with that. This is FDA's guidance from here. Go ahead. Use the mic like this. Okay, thank you. FDA 2001. Well, outliers are defined as subject data for one or more measurements that are discordant with the rest of the subjects. Alright, so that's the definition. Outliers, according to FDA, are just about single subjects displaying something unusual. Now, existence of outliers could constitute one of two situations. It could be a product failure, it could be a subject by formulation and fraction. And of course, a product failure is what we need to avoid. We don't in any way want to have data that gives reason to believe that product failure is on the cards here. And therefore, FDA say we cannot always argue so on basis of the data we produce, and therefore it might not always be relevant. That's for our class. And I think this is a very practical way of writing a guideline. This is not rocket science. If there's a product failure, if the risk exists, then you deal with that risk, but you don't try to deal with it through some funky outlier system. In the EU, we have some wording in our guideline, but exclusion of data can't be accepted on the basis of statistical reasons or pharmacokinetic reasons alone. But we are not really in the EU testing if one subject resembles other subjects or the mean of other subjects. Of course, there are some exceptions, but then we have some special wording for replicate files. I'll come back to these files in my next talk. In replicate files, we want to scale the acceptance range for the confidence interval. We can do that if the infrastructure CV is about 30. I'm sure you all know everything about that. And then the EU guideline says the applicant should justify that the variability is reliable and not the result of an outlier. In other words, EU is kind of hinting that for the purpose of looking at the CV alone, we might wish to convince the regulators one way or another that the CV is not about variability due to an outlier. And we need to bear in mind that when we have an outlier, it can perturb the point estimate either in a positive or in a negative direction. But what it will always do is it will inflate the variability. Keep that in mind. In Canada, they have actually a section dealing with outlier considerations. And I'm not going to read all this aloud, but there is some wording here that says it's recommended that we use a simple outlier test such as the student subject residual. And if that residual is greater than 3, the subject in question can be eliminated. I'm not going to go into any technical detail about the student size residual. It is a dead simple calculation. You just push a button on the statistical software and then you just get out the statistical student size residual. No problem at all. But actually, this is the most complete guideline that is out there in terms of outlier results. And then as a technicality, I can also mention that in the recent two-sequence superior two-treatment bioequivalence design, if we look at outliers for the individual observations, if we have one subject displaying a student size residual, let's say of 4.5 in one period, then by nature of that design, it will be minus 4.5 in the other period. So that's a justification for getting rid of the data in its totality for that subject. Of course, we know that already because we only include subjects to complete the question documentation. So here's a question for you guys, you're the experts. Because, as Nilofer just said, you're not just here because your boss told you to go here, you're here because you want to participate. What went wrong here? Let me see your hand. Raise the hand, somebody. You shy? Yeah, let's go. Tell me. Please, and yeah, go ahead.
Maybe the 2 points were switched by mistake. The pilot how many times were this one instead of that first.
Are you claiming that the subject did not start synthesizing the APIs that you do? No, okay, right. So you don't believe in that value?
This point, the high one, instead of the low point.
Good. So
have been switched by mistake in the left, in the electrical left.
Yes. I think you are absolutely right. And I'm totally sure that each and every one of you have seen profiles of this type. It happens. We can try to have good SOPs in place, but this is actually fairly common. You can imagine what happens if this point was somewhere here or here, what that would entail in terms of the elimination constant and the estimation of the LEC. I'm thinking this may be an aberrant value. We can get rid of that problem if we have good SOPs in place. But if we don't have a good SOP in place, then this thing is going to be a big issue. So thank you for your comment. Next question for the audience. When we are calculating AUC values, how are we dealing with BLQ values in our time series? BLQ is below the limit of the quantification. What do we do with BLQ values when we do non-compartment analysis? Raise a hand. Not you again. Good, yeah. being said here is interpolation, and this is, in my experience, not at all common. There is one principle that is much more common. How do we deal with BOQ values inside a time series? Yeah? Any other suggestions than interpolation? Adaptima, how do you handle that? Say you have a BOQ value at 4 hours and you want to calculate AUC. Well, that question is not entirely simple because there are two ways to calculate AUC. You know all about this, you are just a little shy. I know you know all about this. One is called the linear up and linear down method. And for that we use this equation. And it is a regulatory practice in the EU and in the US and in Canada to accept that when this happens, we consider it a zero if we have linear up and linear down. However, the other equation here is for linear up lockdown. And if you're a pharmacokineticist, you may argue that linear up lockdown is more relevant or more physiologically correct or more pharmacokinetically correct. To calculate an AUC with linear up lockdown, you need to logarithmize the concentrations. So when you do, you cannot set it to zero. Many CROs have thought out on this. Right? Perhaps they have in their SOP that a BOQ in the middle of a time series needs to be set to zero. And then they accept the protocol where the sponsor says we want to use linear lockdown. And they have this apparent value, and now they are in big trouble because suddenly there's no solution in the protocol, there's no solution in the QMS. So whatever they decide to do at that point will result in some kind of regulatory result. So again, this is a very common situation actually, and one that can be solved completely by putting some wording into an SOP. Now, I'm sorry to bombard you with more questions. Many of you try to do bioanalytical validation and then something failed, like freeze and thaw stability or short-term stability or something else, precision at the area, whatever. Can we just repeat a test that is done as part of the bioanalytical validation? We have like 15 tests to be done in a bioanalytical validation. If one of them fails, can we just repeat that? Actually, that question is not addressed by any guideline at all. There's not a single guideline. Which discusses how to deal with failed tests in a validation. Remember that in almost all regulated areas where we have guidelines like in the EU, we are being told that we cannot just ignore a failed test. Like if we have a study, a bioequivalence study, we can't just ignore that study and repeat it unconditionally and then submit the repeated trial as pivotal trial if it passes. So perhaps we might want to use a similar principle in this situation. I think what happens at the moment is that many CROs are a little too eager to just say, oh, that's an apparent value, we can repeat that right in the QMS, that if a test fails, then it can be repeated once or 2 times. And if it passes, then we can say it pass. It's extremely dangerous. Yes, what was just being said here is a failure should be investigated if we have a root cause. If we can assign a root cause to the failure, then we have an extremely good reason to repeat it. The problem is, what we do if we cannot assign a root cause? And this is actually very common. Bioanalytical investigations, they are not always producing a root cause. In fact, I would say 9 out of 10 cases where we investigate, we don't always find it. But you are absolutely right. In the ideal world, we want a recourse, and if we have it, we can repeat the test. Exactly like we can repeat any other test. If we have make problems for ourselves, if we know that the test we have conducted is not a reflection of the true product performance or test performance, by all means we can justify repeating. I think I will skip over the story about succinylcholine. It is an incredibly good case for a population phenomenon where a very, very small fraction of patients have completely different pharmacokinetics. And we sometimes see that in EE trials, but I couldn't find any good examples about it that we use for this presentation. But the succinylcholine case can change a half-life from a few minutes to several hours, depending on which population you look at. About 0.05% of the population display this phenomenon cannot be anesthetized. Now, this brings us to a subject-type formulation interaction, which is a principal concern according to FDA and other regulations. Imagine that we generally respond in the same way to a test drug, but some of us will respond differently to the reference formulation. Not all of us, but some of us will do it consistently. That is a subject-type formulation interaction, and usually our bioequivalence designs are completely unsuitable for addressing this phenomenon. We cannot do any really statistical testing with the standard designs. And that is why if we receive a deficiency letter, is your outlier, or is your apparent value by subject-type formulation interaction, we'll just have to answer we don't think so, or perhaps that we can't really argue with that. But it is a very toxic topic. Right. The whole idea of bioequivalence is that if we have a test reference ratio of 1 in Georgia, then that test reference ratio should be the same in other jurisdictions, even though decay changes between populations, ratios of drugs are not supposed to do so. And if they did, then that would be a subject by formulation interaction. So this is becoming, I think, a new battleground where some innovator companies afraid of generic approval, they're trying to argue of the existence of subject by formulation interactions in order to kind of muddy the waters a little bit and say this causes outliers and cannot take regulatory decisions on the basis of data sets with that kind of outliers. I think this is where the battle currently stands, and I know people who are actively working on detecting subject by formulation interactions, and I think they will become very successful at the moment. Let me present a few cases about outliers in real life from some assessment reports that are in the public domain. The first one here is from Austria. Let's see. One subject considered outlier, a redosing study was done, and they didn't like that. And therefore, the data set in that study was not accepted, and therefore the company had to accept that they had a new study. Right? So that may be an ongoing investment. So look at a case from the Netherlands. One subject was excluded from the stats analysis. Extrapolated area was very high. In addition, one subject was excluded as an outlier because the subject displayed a 2.6-fold higher exposure than the reference drug in the same subject. Where does that come from? It's not written anywhere that this is how it works, but this is how it works in the Netherlands.
And therefore, I think it's impossible to come forward with any specific rules on how to deal with outliers. It really depends on the country. Perhaps it even depends on the assessor. Perhaps it even depends on how the assessor slept the night before he did that assessment. So that's what we are up against. Let me present a wild case of a trial failure. This is again a document from public domain. Raltus is an inhaled drug containing 10 micrograms of tiotropium, 10 micrograms delivered, it's 18 micrograms nominal. Well, this product ended up being approved with 2 pivotal PK studies. And in the first PK study, the AUC estimate was 193%, and the Cmax was perfect. The CV was either undefined or 100-something% for AUC and 41 for Cmax. You see that for inhalation products all the time, because we don't have any good IVCs. We don't have a good understanding of how to do any kind of in vitro tests which can predict anything in vivo, and that's why we see this all the time on estimates of 300% even canine. In this case, the applicant said, well, we only dosed 1 capsule, 1 dose per period, and that was a mistake from our side. So we're going to repeat this study with 2 capsules per subject, because then we can characterize the pharmacokinetic profile better. The last part is probably correct. May be able to characterize the PK profile better, but there is a double dose. I think we can find in the SPC that there's linear kinetics, so you would expect the concentrations to go. And the regulators accepted that. So, according to the assessment report, the study was simply just repeated without a reformulation. And now they've got this. This is quite incredible, but it's not atypical for inhalation products. And I think this is such a great case indicating how real world does not really reflect what is written in guidelines. It's not written anywhere that this approach would ever have resulted in an approval. It did. Finally, I want to bring forward a case of fraud from a country a little bit east of here. A CRO called Semler was issued a notice of concern in 2016. Same year they got a letter from FDA, which was also not a completely friendly message. Subject samples were switched. Subjects were being re-injected under the identity of a new subject number with test and reference switched. So imagine we have a subject X displaying test reference ratio of 2. We know a test reference ratio of 2 is not good for us. We want it to be 1. Now we inject that subject under a new subject number. Y, subject Y. But we're switching test and reference, which means test and reference for the new subject is now 0.5. If we include X and Y in the statistical analysis, they will contribute to the statistical analysis with a point estimate of exactly 1 plus minus the analytical noise. Which means that if we're dealing with this type of fraud, which is new in bioequivalence, but it has been seen across several CROs now, then outlier detection would never reveal it, because the original values are not more extreme than the fraudulent values. And this is another very important conclusion. Fraud detection is not outlier detection. So where am I going with all this? Well, I think that this discussion of outliers, the way we are sometimes seeing it, should we use hotspots, should we use studentized residuals, should we use Lund's test, should we use something else? I think that is an unnecessary discussion. Rather, we should put into our QMS some very healthy procedures on how to deal with the aberrant values. Deal with them as early as possible so that we don't end up with study results that are funny. And this is where I think outlier testing is no longer such a big regulatory issue. It's more, I more see it as a QMS issue. We don't need to discuss outliers very often if we have very good QMS in place. And I'm saying that as on basis of experience. I mean, I've been a consultant to WHO for several years. I've inspected a million CROs. I've been auditing also for HP, and I'm auditing private companies. I don't think many CROs have a completely solid QMS in place when it comes to dealing with the aberrant values. But if they had, we would very likely never end up with these study results where we are desperate enough that we ask permission to remove certain subjects in order to make this study possible. So I think in terms of harmonization, we have some not very specific guidelines. I don't think we need to harmonize them any further. They are saying almost the same anyway. So that's it. Thank you for listening to my talk.
So we have some time for questions for Dr. Buston.
Thank you, Anders, for this nice informative presentation. I have now to use the expression which you not allowed me to use it. Something in your presentation charged my small one-not brain. I don't know if you are aware about the new guidelines from the biopharmaceutical method validation from the FDA, which is issued in May 2018. I will cite from these guidelines. Study samples with concentration listed below the low limit of quantification should be reported as below quantification limit. I cannot put it as 0, as you suggest for the evaluation of the hidden literature.
That is absolutely correct. You need to report it as a BLQ because that's what you have. You have measured something which is BLQ, so you are reporting it as BLQ. However, for the purpose of calculating the AUC, you cannot do anything with the BLQ. You need to decide what to do with it. You can remove the point, you can extrapolate the point, you can set it to 0, and you can set it to any other value. But you need to do something about the point. And this is not the same as reporting.
Yes, I understand your point, but when it's stated clearly in the guidelines, I cannot do it. It's not a solution to that. I can start
Well, in my opinion, that is exactly the solution because we're quoting from the bioanalytical guideline, and it is crystal clear. If you measure a BLQ, you report it as a BLQ. The problem comes downstream when you try to calculate the AUC.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a request? Like when you have a question, if you can just state your name and your affiliation so that everybody else in the audience knows who's speaking. Thank you.
Nasser from the University of Petra. One comment about the use of method validation for analysis. I think it's allowed that before statistical analysis, if the lab discovered that they should go down below the limit of the quantification, because they didn't expect to be, the presentations are very, very low. So they are allowed to revalidate the analysis and continue with the analysis, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. This is one of the reasons. And my second question is about, when you said something, I forgot which guideline that you have presented, that when you are not allowed to, that's what I understood, you're not allowed to widen the Cmax minus if the variability is high because of outlier. Is this true or what? I mean, can any agency reject a submitted file because they claim that you are widening Cmax minus because of one outlier? Is this possible? I didn't.
Well, in principle, the wording in the EU guideline they could, on basis of that wording, reject the study if you think that you have an outlier in the study. The sentence in question was actually debated as early as 2007, 2008. I was a regulator in Europe at that time. And I remember we had this discussion at the agency. Should we put a sentence in about that? And I think the fear back then really was that some CROs or sponsors might decide to do sloppy work in order to be allowed to produce an artificially inflated CV that allows them to scale the acceptance range. This is how I remember the discussion from that time.
What do you mean by artificially inflated? They have validated data. You cannot change it. And they have maybe a high CV because of the real data they are having. But they cannot, I mean, this is conflicting, that you are not allowed to remove outliers, and at the same time, you should remove this outlier because this outlier has inflated limits.
I agree.
Which way to go?
I agree, and it would be in some ways nice if there was a solution to that issue. I agree. This is not easy to deal with. I don't have a solution for all scenarios when you're dealing with that sentence. I think it would very much even come down to the assessor at the agency how that would be perceived.
So we have time for only one more question, please.
Thank you, Dr. Anwar. My name is Mohammed Hindawi from UK. I like about the idea about how the Health Canada actually consider the outliers. They have an equation for outliers to work it out, whether that would be acceptable or not. Because it's not mentioned in the EU, it's not mentioned in the FDA, it's only mentioned in Health Canada. So what do you say about that? Why have for example, the EU or the FDA has not actually considered using the statistical analysis?
They have definitely considered that. Now, I also...
It's not mentioned in the guideline, is it?
When we are dealing with regulators, it's not always easy to ask the question why, because we'll never get an answer to exactly the question why.
No.
However, I know that all types of outlier detection has been used. The problem with the studentized procedure, which is part of Canada's guidance, is that it does not take into consideration that we have other factors in the model, like treatment
You disagree with Canada, is it not Canada?
I'm not saying I disagree. I'm saying it's excellent that the guideline is very specific, and when it is very specific, we need to give them exactly what they're asking for. But I'm not saying it is right. I'm saying if it's in the guideline, we'll try to comply with it.
It's strange to see how Canada actually becomes an outlier from the other two agencies. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
If I can say something here as a regulator, we find ourselves very challenging when we have this outliers, and it's equally hard for us as it is for you, because looking at the data and why should we allow these outliers? And you said something very well. It's the QMS. It's like have your systems, have your procedures, and in the right places to control for all these kind of errors. Because we cannot distinguish whether it's a human error or like a study conduct error or it's a true physiological observation that we are looking into. So even for us, it's a challenge. So the right thing to do is have your correct procedures in place and have a good QMS system. So I cannot agree more with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome our next speaker now. Our speaker is Dr. Nuno Silva. He is a pharmacokinetics expert and the assessor at the Portuguese Regulatory Agency and EMA. And he's going to talk to us about field studies, the regulatory consequences, and the suggestions. Let me welcome Dr.
So, good morning. Thank you. I would like to thank to Dima, Dr. Ali, Dr. Rabat for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and share my experience on this strange topic as failed studies and what the agencies or the companies should do with this data. So just to emphasize that the following presentation reflects my opinion and does not necessarily represent the official position of the regulatory agencies. Okay, so I will try to talk about a little bit of how this topic ended on EMA regulation, how this topic was dealt with FDA regulation, and some statistical data about failed studies, and how to avoid failed studies, and what to do with failed studies data from a regulatory perspective and from a company's perspective. So the first time that this topic started on EMA was on the draft guideline, when the guideline was in revision, and a section was added on line 528, and the wording at that time was that if the application contains some studies which demonstrate bioequivalence and others that do not, the documentation must be considered as a whole. The existence of a positive study does not mean that negative studies can be ignored. In this situation, the interpretation of the overall documentation is not straightforward, but there are three distinct situations which can be considered. So the first situation is that if after the failed trial or trials, some well-justified modifications have been made to the product that addressed the deficiencies that were revealed, then a subsequent bioequivalence study can be accessed without reference to the previous results. A positive study in this situation is not downgraded by the previous negative results. In the second scenario, if the failed trial was ambiguous, which means that the confidence intervals were wide and were consistent with both possible bioequivalence and lack of bioequivalence, then a subsequent positive study can be convincing. This is because the new study does not contradict the previous study, but it provides additional information that allow us to be confident that the previous failure was because of lack of information rather than lack of bioequivalence. It is not acceptable to be together two ambiguous studies to reach a positive conclusion. And the third scenario, and controversial scenario, was if the failed study clearly shows that the test product is equivalent with a reference, a subsequent positive trial will then be a contradictory finding. In this situation, additional studies will be needed until the evidence for bioequivalence clearly outweighs the evidence against, indicating that the failed studies were simply unlucky chance findings. It is not acceptable to group together positive and negative studies in a meta-analysis. And this the emphasized that it was at that time the most commented wording from EMA by the companies when the draft guidance was for comment. So EMA clarified that all studies apply to bioequivalence studies carried out on the same formulation, manufactured according to the same manufacturing process, and supporting the European registration of a medicinal product. Two medicinal products are considered different if one is derived from the other following a reformulation step in the pharmaceutical development process. And these studies should be presented in the dossier regardless of the outcome of the study. Studies against non-EU European Union reference products should not be submitted. Study reports, synopsis of bioequivalence or comparative bioavailability studies conducted during formulation development should also be provided. So this was a kind of clarification for the comments we received by the companies at that time. And it was agreed by EMA that failed studies with early formulations are of limited interest for the demonstration of bioequivalence. However, study synopses for such studies should be submitted as they might provide information that might be useful in the assessment of the in vitro dissolution method. And what about FDA? FDA is more concise and more accurate on dealing with failed studies. So they moved and however, this knowledge on failed studies failed or when the final guideline was approved. So there is any sentence about failed studies in the guideline. So what about the FDA? FDA has this all bioequivalence studies rule that was approved in 2009. And it is believed for any FDA that data from additional bioequivalence studies may be important in FDA's determination of whether the proposed formulation is bioequivalent to the reference listed drug. Data are relevant to FDA's evaluation of abbreviated drug applications in general, and that there will be increased FDA's understanding of how changes in components, composition, and methods of manufacture may affect product formulation. So this is the rule that makes companies to submit all failed studies in the FDA. So so generally, this rule describes types of ANDA submissions covered by all the bioequivalence study rule, recommends the format for summary reports on bioequivalence studies, and explains type of formulation that FDA is considered to be the same as the submitted for approval. So under this bioequivalence data rule, the applicants are required to submit information from all bioequivalence studies conducted on the same formulation of the drug product contained in the following submissions. And all abbreviated submissions with amendments, supplements submitted under suitable publication and annual reports are included in this requirement. So what is the concept of safe formulation for FDA? Because this was, I think, tricky to define by EMA. So for FDA, the same drug product formulation means formulation of the drug product submitted for approval, and any formulations that have minor differences in composition or method of manufacture from the formulation submitted for approval, but are similar enough to be relevant to the FDA's determination of bioequivalence. And this applies also to whether the products are manufactured at the same or different manufacturing sites. Differences in composition to consider when comparing drug product formulations are clearly described in this rule for immediate release and extended release. So if you want to know about the differences that are admitted by the FDA, you have to look and to read this document. You can download from the internet. So, what are, in my opinion, failed studies? Failed studies are pivotal studies, not pilot studies, that fail to show bioequivalence on Cmax and AEC metrics has a regulatory bioequivalence limits. And why do bioequivalence trials fail? So, probably because are truly known bioequivalence drug products, or the product has had the unluck to be one of the 20% or 10% false negatives, or because the study was not well performed, it was unpowered, it has not the sufficient number of subjects regarding the intrasubject CD, or eventually the study was inappropriately designed for the drug or the drug product. And in my personal opinion, new products will be more complex. So it will need much more appropriate designs. So what about statistical data that was released from these observations? Of course, there is no statistical data from EMA, and there is, I found in the internet two data, one regarding 2 years of experience and for sample studies, and one other from, also from FDA regarding delayed release formulations. So in this 2 years experience, 199 studies were assessed, from which 88 studies have failed, and the reasons were mostly unpowered studies. This corresponds for about 70%. Also, a high number of underdeveloped formulations that failed the studies. So, in my opinion, these underpowered studies as a major percentage is because in this analysis was considered pilot studies, which in my opinion are studies that normally are underpowered. And it's supposed to be underpowered just to understand what might be the chances of a new product. In the second assessment of the late release drug products, also, and this was specifically for non-pivotal studies, also underpowered studies, inadequate blood sampling, inappropriate study design, or study conditions. And this was a long period from 2009 to December 2016. Okay, so what about the importance of having the appropriate estimate for intrasubject CD? And where can we find this information? But it's very important to go to the literature to have the best estimate. And the best estimate if you can see here, this is in-house data sharing, crossing the intra-subject CV declared in the protocol and the intra-subject CV estimated in the study. And you can see there is a quite good correlation between ESCV from 15% to around 30%, but then with higher CVs, the problems came. Why? Because probably the intra-subject CV declared in the protocol was based on small studies, probably from the innovator studies that are published on FDA's reports. And in reality, probably the real intra-subject CV with higher sample sizes are higher than the ones that were declared in the protocol. And what about AUC? AUC is normally the less complicated metric. But nowadays, with the new drug products, I think AUC, ISCV is coming up. So, for the first time, I have accessed products with AUC's ESCVs about 40%, which is not very common. Normally, we focus a high ACVs on CMAX. And another anti-fraud system that the agencies might use is to compare the obtained ESCV of the studies with agencies' experience on the assessments. Because sometimes if there is a fraud, this is an issue that might be found. Okay, so to avoid failed bioequivalence studies, is highly important to perform a quality by design pharmaceutical development, and I'm talking about from a company's perspective, develop appropriate discriminative dissolution of the same conditions, include the biopharmaceutical scientists in the development team, use of a physiologically based pharmacokinetic modeling for predictions, and plan accurately a bioequivalence trial. I'm talking about study design, appropriate number of subjects, blood sampling, study conditions, etc. So this is a very important plan. Okay, and to appropriately power a study, you can search in the literature from other published bioequivalence trials the estimates of ESCV, and if you find number-sized studies use that information from papers, e-pars, from bioequivalence between intended for commercial formulation and clinical trials formulation, from pharmacokinetic drug-drug interaction studies, or from pharmacokinetic fluid studies, which normally present different ISCV between the fed and the fasting state. So, to sample size populations, use specific software. There are some software that is free, like this R package developed by, I think it was developed by Almond, I think. And what to do with failed studies? From a company perspective, failed studies should be part of the drug product development budgeting, because it might happen. Failed studies should be used to understand the interaction between drug and drug product formulation within the gastrointestinal tract. And PBPK modeling is highly important in these situations. So please avoid trial and error approach, as it was in the past. Failed study should be seen as a new learning opportunity and not a failed project. Failed studies resume should be included on module 3.2 E2, which corresponds to the pharmaceutical development module, and use of the PBPK modeling as an additional tool on the decision to go or not to go for a bioequivalence study. And from a regulator's perspective, the regulators should understand that failed studies are part of the drug product development. Failed studies are obviously unwanted from drug product developers. Failed studies should be seen as a new learning opportunity to regulate specific guidances in order to avoid future inappropriate study designs. And regulators should request for new protocols and the inclusion of appropriate details of past failed studies on sections discussion of study design in order to correctly assess the new protocols and assure the need of new studies. And new studies will imply that healthy subjects will be exposed again to a drug substance. So when accessing the protocol, the regulators should understand what was the root cause that was the failing study in the past. Thank you very much.
We have time for some questions.
Abdurrahman Oman. I have a question according to the reason which you mentioned in your presentation, which caused the failing of bioequivalence study. One of most of them is the underpowering the study. Normally the study is done with 80% power. This is as usual. That is, I think that is the responsibility of the independent ethics committee of the CROs to review that, and also the authority to check the power of the study before allowing to conduct the study. This is a part from the authority side and a part from the independent ethics committee. It's the first point. What do you think about if the applicant, the manufacturer, hide that any study would, according to any reason, is failed? What is how to deal as authority with this manufacturer? He hides that one of the studies is failed on submit a new study which is passed. How to deal with that? Thank you.
As I commented before, the statistical that was shown by the FDA included, I think in my opinion, also non-pivotal studies, pilot studies, which are normally underpowered. I mean, they are performed with a low number of subjects, so that was the reason why there was clearly underpowered number of subjects in that number of studies in that statistics. And regarding the second question, when you have another study that passed against the study that did not pass, I think the regulator should understand what happened between the two studies. There should be a root cause.
My question was why an applicant or a manufacturer hiding that one if the study is failed and doesn't submit that for the regulator at all. But the regulator will know by chance, take as chance. And, when you, in this situation, what you have to do with manufacturer in this case? I think the failed study, not to submit to the regulator.
Well, that's a tricky question. I mean, I think transparency should be one thing between manufacturing and regulators. So I don't think there is a problem showing as a synopsis of the study in the pharmaceutical technology, because field studies should be part of the product, not product development.
I think if you could hold your question and then can we have it during the discussion session? I think because our time is up, so but you could still hold your question and then you can ask it during the discussion. But thank you very much, Mona, and.
Good evening, everyone. Again, we are with Dr. Anders Fulson with his second lecture titled Two-Stage versus Replicate Designs, Sample Size, Pros and Cons. Good evening, everyone. Again, we are with Dr. Anders Fulson with his second lecture titled Two-Stage versus Replicate Designs, Sample Size, Pros and Cons.
Can you hear what I'm saying? Yes. I'm really terribly sorry about this. I thought I was only giving one talk. I learned recently that I was supposed to give two talks, but I'm absolutely delighted to have that opportunity. So this is a talk about the world of repeat studies, two-stage trials that try to address one issue, something with repeat replicate design sample size, and all the pros and cons that exist there. And at the end, I will try to present a little decision tree, which is very rudimentary, and which is completely miserable, but all things considered, which is the best we can do at the moment. Replicate designs. Now, they are not repeat trials, right? They are just an opportunity for demonstration of our programs. As was said before, if the CV is about 30%, then we might be able to scale the acceptance point for CMAX. For FDA, the concept is completely similar, although it might apply to CMAX as well as AUC. The exact statistical approach to doing it is similar but not identical. And I'm not going to go too much into details about it. There are many presentations in the public domain. It's simply a matter of understanding that depending on the intersubject coefficient variation, the acceptance range that applies for CMAX will scale, will be expanded. Now, it also says that we need a replicate design for this in order to measure the true subject CD for a reference. And a common mistake that I'm sometimes seeing, well, not common anymore, but occasional mistake that I'm seeing is that applicants want to deliver the proof of high variability in one study and then do a 2-period trial as proof, and you stay in that design. I can't believe it when I hear it, but it actually pops up every now and then still in my mind. Not a good idea to do it that way. But anyways, this is the opportunity that exists for the replicating. And then there is a big issue with the replicate files. And this was identified by 2 good friends of mine, Deborah and Tony. They looked at the type 1 errors. Now, type 1 error is the chance that we are approving a product which is not bioequivalent. And they looked at type 1 errors for the replicate design that DNA discusses. And they were able to show that there exists certain regions of the variability of the reference product in which the type 1 error is inflated. That means it's above 5%. Usually regulators do not like type 1 errors about 5%. But in this case, applying the guideline means it may sometimes be. And bear in mind that when we are around 0.3 or a little bit above, this is really the area of interest. So all this means that perhaps one of the cons of replicate designs, at least in the flavor that DNA has put forward, one of the cons may simply be that the type 1 error rate is the real flavor. Okay? And then we get to the 2-stage approaches, which also constitute a wonderful opportunity. The idea is very simple. Study a small group of volunteers, look at the data, look at the information contained in that small group of subjects, of volunteers, and use that information to derive the final sample size. And then at the end, group the data and do something, make a conclusion about the progress. And all we need is really the initial sample size and our desired level of power. But in order to set up this, we don't need to know or assume anything about the coefficient of variation. And this is new. This is excellent. That's one basic issue. Actually, I'll come back to that. Perhaps we might wish to stop and analyze for bioequivalence if bioequivalence is shown. But also, if we apply the common alpha 5%, then if we test both after stage 1 and after stage 2 with an alpha of 5%, then prove by 1 error it may actually be above 5% because we serially tested it. Okay? So we need to keep that in mind. And here's a great paper from 10 years ago from Ian Hussey and some of their colleagues. They put forward a proposal. Sequential design approaches for bioequivalence studies to crossover design. So we simply took the good old bioequivalence workforce and said we are going to make a 2-stage trial out of that. With 2 treatment, 2-period, 2-sequence study. Let's compare that to a 2-stage approach where we try to control the type 1 error. And they invented a few methods, a few variations over this scheme, and they showed by means of simulation how they could control the type 1 atmosphere. And I thought that was really, really great. And they studied that for initial sample sizes between 12 and 60, and for coefficients of variations up to 100%. 100% is a lot, like except for studying viruses, as I showed in the previous presentation. But usually synthetic molecules, they usually don't come up to those levels. We'll be discussing extremes like plasma or something like that. The majority of the drugs don't get anywhere near 100%, so they certainly cover the realistic range of drugs. Here's the first scenario they studied. They're saying, study the first initial group of subjects and using an alpha level of 0.05, evaluate power, and if this is above 80% after stage 1, just evaluate bioequivalence at this nominal alpha level of 5%, and conclude either pass or fail.
Or if R was below 80%, calculate a new sample size based on the barriers of stage 1, and the same outcome. Continue to stage 2, where we then include the rest of the subjects, the necessary subjects, and then let the master fail again. And of course, this is kind of a control experiment just to demonstrate how the type 1 error, if we are serially testing the 2 times alpha percent. So method B addresses exactly that. And they are saying value of B at stage 1, not at up to 5%, but at 0.0294. This is a profile, this is an alpha level that comes back from the 70s. 0.0294 comes from alpha profile who studied exactly that value when he studied superiority parallel design groups back in the 70s. But the value is still stuff, and that seems to work very well. So if he is met, stage 1 is a pass. If not, then evaluate power. If it's above 80% at that point, fail. Otherwise, include the necessary subjects, 30% power. Go ahead, do the rest, and do the data pass or fail. Again, at an alpha level of 0.0294. And finally, there was method C, which is power at stage 1. We evaluate power at stage 1 at alpha level of 0, 5. Power is above 80%. Then we evaluate output at 0, 8. If power is below 80%, evaluate PE at stage 1. If we measure that, pass. Otherwise, include the rest of the subject. Go ahead. This is the pooling pass phase. So this is the framework for which they could demonstrate awesome progress in terms of studying bioequivalence. And note that we are working with different alpha levels here. Here are some of their results. They were able to show. Here's a column with the starting sample size, column with the coefficient of variation, and then some columns here with the type 1 errors. And we can clearly see that if we use method A, the one that naively uses 5% alpha at both stages, we could easily get some inflation above 5%, quite a lot of 5%. So clearly, method A goes into the trash can. Method B, well, that seems to control type 1 errors nicely. This is just part of the data. Method C, pretty much the same, although there might exist an area around 10 to 20% of using areas that's slightly inflated type 1 errors. If you get out the B account. And then here are the estimated powers. And we can actually achieve pretty good powers. But in some scenarios, they don't quite come up to 80%, which is the target market in the calculate sample size. This is quite significant. Actually, this table proves the two-page approach is work. Let's then look at the sample size, because all this involves the inclusion of new subjects potentially at stage 2, unless we are including new subjects at stage 1. So Hopkins and co-workers also published the information of the necessary sample sizes. And they presented it as mean as well as medians and fifth and ninth percentiles. They did that with simulated ratios of 1.25 and simulated ratios of 0.955. And of course, this one is used to evaluate the type 1 error, the overall type 1 error. So for the purpose of this discussion, I'll forget about this data, but we'll be looking at this. When we're working with the simulated ratio of 0.95, we have some sample sizes here that are pretty well controlled, but which, depending on the variability, may get enormous. But they would anyway if we were to be doing pivotal studies on drugs with a CT of 100%. But this is still pretty good. And note another feature here. If we look, for example, at, let's say the mean sample size for method B and method C, a CV of 30, you can see that the mean sample size for samples, a starting sample size is 46 point something. 24 is 39 point something. That's the 36 is 40 point something, and then it's at 48 subjects in group 1. So group 1 is 48 point something, which means there's a minimum. At this CV, 30%, the ideal starting sample size is 36. But it's not necessarily 36 ideal sample size in the other scenario of CV. Which means that if you are an applicant and you want to save money, you cannot predict which is the ideal starting sample size. That's an issue with two-stage approaches, and this became apparent when Jan Popperman published this great paper. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If there's uncertainty about the CV, and there certainly is, that's one of the reasons why we're using two-stage approaches, then we don't have the opportunity to tell the clinical manager to select the starting sample size that will result in the study. Another issue, of course, is if the CV could be very high, then probably we are not interested in conducting a study on 358 subjects. We might want to stop that by 100. That's another issue. But basically, I thought it was great with these two-stage approaches until I went into the paper and the methods again. When we calculate power here after stage 1, based on the variance of stage 1, what else do we need to plug in when we calculate power and sample size? We need to plug in a geometric mean ratio. And according to the uncoupling, these methods assume GMR of 95%. So when we are evaluating power, we assume GMR is 0.95. When we calculate a sample size, we assume it's 0.95. When we evaluate our goodness, of course, we use the observed GMR. So, imagine we have stage 1 GMR of 1.89, like a tailor estimate, and perhaps we have a CV of 4%. Then, for the purpose of calculating sample size in the next stage, we're not going to assume this ratio, which we found in stage 1, but we're going to assume that. 0.95%. Where we saw 189%. Yeah. This is exactly what the uncoupling is going to do. I was furious. Do you remember this tennis match back in 1981, John McEnroe? He took his racket and he threw it into the ground and he yelled at the referee, "You cannot be serious." I was having exactly the same sentiment in front of my computer. It's impossible to actually apply the observed GMR for calculation of stage 2 because of stage 1. A lot of the observed GMRs will be, let's say, much lower or much higher than the acceptance rate, which means that power can never exceed 5% anyway. We can never calculate the sample. So technically, Popkin just did what was possible. There was nothing wrong with that, but this two-stage approach simply does not work if we try to plug into the observed stage 1 GMR, unfortunately. In some cases, of course, GMRs could be like 0.84, and if we try to calculate sample sizes for those, then the sample size will seem to grow enormously. So I and many others tried to define two-stage approaches, and I think I've published like 5 or 6 papers about two-stage approaches. And there's not a single problem that in any way is able to take the observed GMR of stage 1 into account.
for the purpose of calculating sample size in the next stage. I know others have tried to do the same and it's failed. You cannot change the successions, but it's in any meaningful way so that you can take the observed GMR from stage 2 to stage 1 into consideration for calculation of sample size. It's a big issue. And therefore, two-stage approaches are extremely good when we have firm control over the GMR. If we know it's 95% or better, then we can use the two-stage approach. Even if there's uncertainty about variability. But if there's uncertainty here on that one, if we are not sure if the GMR is 95% or better, it may be 87%. If we don't know if we have a good formulation, we have to substitute. Big issue. Now, this is just wording the different. When there's so much uncertainty on the point estimate that we cannot use the information about that uncertainty in any meaningful way. It is as simple as that. And it all has to do with the way it works with our sample size. And here's just two graphs illustrating how difficult and how tricky it is to make assumptions about sample sizes. The blue curve here is for a test reference ratio of 95% CV credit, and at 52 subjects we have 90% power. The red curve here is for a test reference ratio of 90% same CV. So imagine we believe our true ratio is 95%, and we calculate the sample size for 90% power, 52. But if it turns out our guess here was wrong, it was not 95%, but actually 90%, we'll never know for sure. If you're making that wrong assumption, if it's a little worse than guess, then power simply drops right as well. That is extremely annoying. This shows the importance of totally being able to do something about not only CV but also GMR and planning sample sizes and I emphasize that this is for those with a single API. Of course, if we have a combination part, then the issue gets 4 times worse because that will be both the Cmax and the C that needs to pass it. So we need to be engaged on the T as well as HC. So I published quite a few papers on this and made all sorts of modifications. So I'm not going to go too much into those. Here's a question for you guys, but I think we are a little late, so I'll skip over those. We can do this in a public break. Here's a little graphic illustrating how studies fail. You know already, told you that, and besides we will get to make a slide in the palm. I will turn it to something. So I'll skip over that. And then we come to the next. It turned out that I realized while I was doing simulations on the two-stage trial, the number that I actually simulated how well it worked through the pilot trial and then at the books. So I decided to do a presentation about that. And there are various scenarios we can embark on when applying first a pilot trial and then deciding whether or not to go into a global trial. Here's a simple one. Conduct a pilot trial in one subject, could be 12, 48 or whatever. And once we have some data from the pilot, we can calculate all the sample size using perhaps the observed CV and a fixed GMR like Scotland did. Or we could say we're going to apply the observed GMR. Of course, if it's outside the acceptance range, we'll never be able to calculate the sample size for it. But anyways, we can then conduct that new trial in 2 subjects. And then show the faster rate. Or we can make it altogether more complicated. Conduct the trial in 1 subject. And if we are showing bioequivalence in the pilot trial, then we can try and submit that to the regulator, right? Perhaps they will accept it. Some regulators in Europe are actually happy to do that. Some regulators are not too happy about it. But there's nothing written in any guideline, date collection of everything. It's not written anywhere that a pilot file cannot be used as data. Anyways, if we agree with this way, of course, this would allow us 2 chances of showing bioequivalence. So once again, we might be automatically at one or both of the stages, or one or both of the trials in order to not to have infringement. And I made a lot of simulations, and then I concluded that I was easily getting faded, not unexpectedly, if we apply alpha 5% both for the pilot and the control. If we try to use the observed GMR, then sample size will completely skyrocket when we are using that GMR from the pilot file to calculate the sample size for the vote file, and therefore pilot files are not very good. It's not possible to identify a net that gives high power and low power while using the sample size reason. So, I'm left not knowing what to do with the pilot file. The pilot file is not good for checking if we have a formulation that is a match, potential match. I simply don't know at this stage still how to apply pilot file. If we want to test something about the CV, then pilot file is good. If we want to make sure that our blood sampling, plasma sampling regimen is good, pilot file is excellent. Pilot file is not good for the purpose of checking if we have a good candidate. They are only good if we have complete control over the geometric mean vector and uncertainty on the CV. That is the situation when the 2-stage files are in. So, here is the decision tree. This is the best I can do. Imagine we need to decide what kind of design we are going to use in our next problem. Do we have firm control over the GMR? No? Oh, then I don't know what to do. But the solution is not a pilot file, it's not a two-stage file, and it's not a graphical design. I don't know what that is. If we have control over the GMR, we need to decide whether we believe the CV is about 30%. And if we are certain there it is, then of course it's a replicate file. If it's certainly not about 30, then it's a two-stage file. And if it is perhaps about 30%, then I don't quite know what to do. I've been working with bioequivalence for, I don't know, 20 years, and I'm frustrated because of exactly this. But you guys are the experts. You are much smarter than I am. Can you please come and tell me in the coffee break or the lunch break what the solution to this is? Because I have no clue. So, thank you for listening. Please get in touch.
Thank you again. I think we have around 6 minutes or 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Andres, for this fantastic presentation. It is pure science. What I can understand, Andres, here, you get that the vitamin B and vitamin C, that you are afraid that the geometric mean ratio could go down. Okay, and that is the power of the study will be not, as you suggest, 80% as example, or 90%. But you add a subject in the second stages, which normally increase the power of the study. And you keep in the same time the type 1 error, the alpha. And I think that's Mrs. Woodpin, which did it through stimulation, through millions of stimulations, which couldn't, not shown at all. The geometric mean ratio is could be affected. I don't understand the question. Could you repeat it with other words? Okay. I mean, the geometric mean ratio, you mentioned that the geometric mean ratio could be not the applied geometric mean ratio. And the power of the study, the two-stage approach study, could be put down. But in the second stage, you add subjects. Okay, and more subjects, more than as the first stage. That means you increase already the power of the study. The type 1 error or the alpha will be also not inflated. I don't know why this is not, I don't know.
Murat, can you switch on the presentation? So this is basically where we are. For example, here with problem D, we evaluate D at stage 1 with the observed QMR. Regardless of what we observe, when we are calculating the sample size of stage 2, if we need a stage, we are going to assume 0.95 regardless of how good or bad it is here. This is not per se about the type 1 error. This is about the sample size itself. But when we assume 0.95, this may not in any way be realistic, especially not if we have observed a value which is not there. And this is why this scenario completely fails when there is uncertainty on the QMR. So this is not so much about type 1 error, this is about sample size.
But the sample size could be increased in the second stage, normally.
Yeah, you include extra subjects here in order to
more than in the first stage. This means the power will not go down. It will be the same power as we started before.
Yes, but you are making the assumption that QMR is 0.95, and you are hoping to achieve 8% power power. But in reality, with your QMR, which drives the true power, maybe it might be 0.4%.
Okay, I think we can invest about hyperglycemic drugs. As you know, that's according to the equation that you showed, that the EMA expand the cap with 50%. We did some studies in the recently, that is the study, the GCC guidelines allowed only for cap maximum 35%. That means the study according to the GCC is failed. According to other guidelines, it is passed. How to deal with that?
You're asking me why is the limit 50%?
That is certified. So maximum Cmax value can expand 133 point something.
You know what? I think that question should be asked to Nuno instead of to me. When we are dealing with questions that start with the word why, then the law works in mysterious ways, right? We cannot ask the regulator why.
I'm sorry. I think we have to give the chance for another one question. I don't know if we can have after the fourth session 5 minutes or...
Or come and get me in the lunch break. I'd be so happy to discuss this.
Hakima from Hikma Pharmaceuticals. Very nice presentation. Thank you all for the presentation. Really, my question now, I will ask you another question regarding the estimate and the question mark that you left us with is what we should do. I would ask you from your experience, what do you think about the reference product? What should we do with the reference product in such high variability and such type of things?
What should we do with the reference product?
Yes, since it's highly variable, even if I want to go to endpoints, pharmacodynamic, clinical studies,
No.
what should I do? I was thinking another way. What should I do with a reference product that it's really, so we will prove that it's highly variable. So reference and the test, and what we should do? Just a question. Thank you.
It's an excellent question, and actually I think Rida Benaiva, who was the speaker at last year's event, he actually talked about this, and he presented a great case of a reference product completely misbehaving. And he presented a case where he actually revealed how DNA was thinking about reference products misbehaving. In this case, as far as I remember, he had a replicate study with 80 subjects, something like that,
and then 7 of them or something had almost zero absorption. And EMA actually took a decision on what to do that, and they said, yeah, we might be able to approve it, but it's not going to be a generic, it's going to be a value-added medicine, it's going to be a hybrid in DPQ. But that's what he said. We can look at this presentation together at the lunch break. Now you have it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now with our fourth and last session, for the morning session, with Professor Peter Lagans. Actually, Professor Peter is a professor of pharmaceutical technology and biopharmaceutics. And he works at the University of Mainz in Germany. And now we are going to listen to a lecture about product reformulation value of comparative dissolution testing.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, that's good. And also I'd like to thank Dr. Abba, Dr. Buda, for the kind invitation and everybody who is involved in this event that I don't know and cannot address, but thanks for the invitation and for being here for the second time. The topic of my title is comparative dissolution testing in evaluating reformulated products. And that brings me to the first slide, where I try to define what kind of qualification demands we have with respect to in vitro biopharmaceutical product testing. And we see here that there's quite a number of demands for these tests, including quality control tests mainly, and that's in the past to use them for batch release. Then they are used as stability indicating tests, also as to identify critical manufacturing variables and as an indicator of product safety. So this is the traditional parts of qualification demands for the distribution test, but also we want to shift the aim towards even more being more biopredictive than these type of questions that are basically irrelevant for an in vivo situation. And so the approach that started by the US FDA was the quality by design, and they have defined quality as a low risk of failing to achieve the desired clinical attributes as definition for good pharmaceutical quality. And so that means that the product and the process performance characteristics are scientifically designed, not just empirically derived from performance of test batches. And that includes a lot of those tools that are implemented today, such as the definition of target product profiles, evaluating critical quality attributes of the product and the process, looking at the process design, doing appropriate risk analysis for most of the steps involved, including manufacturing of API, but also of the product, and then risk control and evaluation for those steps that are critical, and typically then in the process there are in-process controls established to monitor whether the batch is going the right side or not. So the QPD in biopharmaceutics is a little different because in the past the dissolution testing was more considered as a quality control parameter to indicating that if the dissolution was out of the specifications, something went wrong with the process. And the new role of the dissolution testing is to use the dissolution as an in vivo biopredictive tool to establish clinically relevant quality attributes. And so that is, of course, much more to ask, because in this case we need to give some clinical meaning to dissolution results that may be out of specification, or, if you put it in another way around, to give some more clinically meaningful numbers and explanations to the specifications of the dissolution test. And so you have to look in the following way at it, that dissolution is not just merely a quality control test for the product, but it is in the middle position between the process, the composition in terms of excipients, composition, process parameters, and so on. It is positioned between this chemistry and manufacturing control and the biopharmaceutics evaluation and performance of the product, which then defines the pharmacological and toxicological effects and finally the clinical outcomes. So it's more a central role in bridging between chemistry and biology and pharmacology. Naturally, this call for biologically relevant interpretation of dissolution results between different products calls for a correlation or a relationship rather between the in vitro and in vivo results. And so the classical term here is the in vivo relationship, which basically is functioning like that. You have a certain in vitro dissolution profile. These are the dosage forms that you see here, A, B, and C. You measure the pharmacokinetic profile of these systemically acting drugs following administration of these dosage forms, and you can then, in an ideal case, this would look like this. A being a slow-releasing drug has the lowest Cmax, and the longest Tmax, B being in the middle, having this kind of curve, and C being the fastest release, having the highest Cmax and the lowest Tmax. And if you will, and if there is a defined relationship between the pharmacokinetics, that's the concentration in the plasma, and the effect, you could even calculate effect versus time curves following administration of the same API in these dosage forms that are releasing with different velocities. So the classical way of making sense out of that was the two-stage method for the development of an IV-IVC. And I will walk you through this slide. It starts with the dosage forms, of course, that have different release rates. And you measure the plasma concentrations following administration of these dosage forms in healthy volunteers. And then you deconvolute these plasma concentration time curves. There's different ways how you can do this. And obtain the drug input velocity profile. This is the in vivo absorption rate, where you plot the percent absorption versus time. And then you compare that with your in vitro dissolution method, as you see here. That's stage 2A. And in the next stage, you got an overlay of the in vitro versus the in vivo curve. That is the in vitro dissolution and the in vivo absorption curve. And in this case, of course, it was a synthetic case matched. And then in stage 2B, you can plot one versus the other. That is the in vitro release rate versus the in vivo absorption rate. And if you are lucky enough, you get a straight line. Sometimes you may not get a straight line. That may also be accepted. But it shows that your in vitro method is basically predicting what you observe in vivo. And then if you are at that stage, you know your in vitro method is not just quality control. Is actually bioequivalence. There are a number of consequences that you can operate with if you have such a IVC developed. I'm not going here into great detail because it takes too much time. For example, you can specify, you can write in your product specifications, your in vitro dissolution specifications. If you have a validated IVC and you can prove that your dissolution changes are not going to turn into bioinequivalent release of bioinequivalent batches in vivo. So depending on the way the correlation is worked out, you can actually not just have to stay within 10% of the specified number, but you can even widen it because you can show that changes in dissolution beyond this typical range of plus minus 10% are not going to affect the plasma concentration time profile to an extent that the product will become bioinequivalent. Like that. So, when you are typically in the situation where you have in a generic field where you have a innovator product and you want to copy that, then the first question that you need to ask is, okay, how do I copy it? This is, of course, the formulator task, but then you need to ask the question, do I have any means of in vitro evaluating my true dosage forms? And so you cannot usually do the formal IVC, but you start with some sort of an alternative process. And this is the diagram that demonstrates how you could do that. The initial effort is that you have a dosage form developed in addition to the one that you have available, the comparator product, and you do sort of in vitro dissolution studies under the typical conditions that you choose for the API, for the dosage form, in terms of the apparatus that you use, in terms of the conditions like the buffer, dispersion speed, and so on. You have a lot of orienting information for that in the pharmacopoeias, or you could start with. So that's the initial effort. And then you would use this in vivo dissolution information to make some sort of an in vivo prediction. And then you would see if you can match somehow the in vivo results, actually the in vivo results. If not, it becomes necessary to reassess this. In other words, to modify the in vitro dissolution method in order to have a better bioprediction. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes it works, and of course I have some cases that we've been involved in that were quite positive. Here's case study number 1. This was a low-soluble drug. It's a celecoxib. And since this is so low-soluble, we had to formulate it in a solid version and developed a solution test for it with the aim of being as biopredictive as we can. So here are the different formulations and the dissolution profiles. This is basically the identical curves, left and right, but you can see this time scale. This left curve is the time scale of 24 hours, and this one is, I can't read this. I can't read this either. So, this is 90 minutes. So it's more the front part of this curve that is positive. So you observe a number of different things. First of all, the formulations all seem to be different, okay? And that depends on the polymer that is used and the type of process that is used. The crystalline material was different sometimes. And so it's not surprising that these different formulations for the same drug end up with different dissolution profiles. A second interpretation is that you see that you have these atypical shapes in the dissolution curve, indicating that we have supersaturation occurring, and thereafter precipitation of the drug after the supersaturation continues. Small crystals can form, and then you get a precipitation of the drug that is in the supersaturated state. So that's the other interesting thing. And sometimes you see the supersaturation, and sometimes not, depending on the formulation. Okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean anything? A in vivo study was then conducted. I should say this is actually the best profile. We have started very modest with dissolution tests that were not biopredictive at all. This was our best in vitro outcome. Here are the in vivo plasma concentration time profiles, and then here you see the best IVC that we could get, and that is a plot of the in vivo AUC observed in the individuals versus the in vitro AUC that we observed in our dissolution test. Now there are better ways to come up with more conclusive IVCs, yet we were quite satisfied with this one because in the development it helped us to select the formulation that would be quite biopredictive and best performing in the in vivo situation. So we made some sense. We didn't measure dissolution, but we made some sense in terms of the dissolution being in a certain way predictive for the in vivo situation. Here's the second case study, and that is on a drug called fenofibrate. It's a BCS class 2 material, low soluble, high permeable, and the dosage form is a melt dose preparation, where the fenofibrate is first dispersed in a melted vehicle consisting of PET and other surface active polymer type excipients. Sprayed on carrier particles, this leads to controlled agglomeration, and then there is direct tableting of these controlled agglomerates, including some super disintegrants to disperse it after contact with water. So this is the process, and the question was, are the formulations different in vivo, and can we explain the differences that we observed in vivo with using in vitro distribution tests? So here are the results of the pharmacokinetic study. Obviously there was 6 formulations here, A to F, and these are the plasma concentrations. You can see they are really different, mainly in terms of Cmax, not so much in terms of AUC. So you can distinguish these formulations, and here are the numbers. As I said, formulation A was 123% Cmax, and then the poorest in terms of Cmax was formulation F, about 73%. Cmax, not so much different in use. What we also have plotted here in this slide was the SLS content per tablet. I mean, sodium lauryl sulfate was added, was absolutely necessary in some formulations to increase the rating of the drug. And you see here the content of SLS in these formulations. This is 10 milligram per tablet up to 67 milligram per tablet in formulation 2. And that is going to be interesting, as we will see later. So first, our initial attempts to try to use a USB 2 pedal apparatus to identify a distribution method that would be discriminative between those formulations, and we all failed, I would say. This is more, I think one graduate student spent 2 years trying to find a good method, but he gave up. Not completely, I mean his thesis was finished, but he didn't find a USB 2-based method. Because, for example, you see here the formulation A, that was the front runner, here is not really the front runner in terms of dissolution of phenylfibrate, whereas the other one is D. This was 86% in terms of Cmax, and it performed much nicer. The exposure in the dissolution was much better than in formulation A using this method. This is, I think, this was the method is given here, 1,000 ml water, 1.5% SLS, 50 RPM, 37 degrees. So no matter what we did, also using fasted media and so on, this was not the right way. So we had to search on to use something, and that is information we should also take home as a message, is that sometimes not always the pharmacopoeial tests are going to give you the right predictions, and sometimes you have to look for alternative ways for identifying in vitro tests that can be predicted. And in this case it was quite a long way, because we had to identify and first compare the different surfactants that were formulated within the tablets. We have surfactants 1, 2, 3, and SLS was the 4. I cannot tell you what is the structure of these because of the proprietary reasons. But we saw interesting differences when we looked into the effect of surfactant concentration versus the permeated fraction of the phenylfibrate across an in vitro model. Whereas surfactant, for example, 2 did not really change the permeated amount of phenylfibrate with increasing concentrations. The other 3 surfactants decreased the permeated fraction, indicating that there could be some micellar entrapment of the phenylfibrate after dissolution. And of course, if we do a normal dissolution test of the USB2, we measure everything. We measure micellar entrapment, and we measure free fraction. And the micellar entrapped fraction is usually not absorbed. So that we have to know. And that could be the reason why the in vitro test is not predictive against the USB2. So what we use is a separating membrane here. We have a donor chamber for the drug and a receiver chamber. And so if we dissolve the tablets in the micellar containing donor solution, then only the free drug will permeate across this permeation barrier, which is typically a carbo-2-side monolayer barrier. And then we can measure the free drug concentration increase in the acceptor side. So it was necessary to separate free drug, which is permeating from the micellar and trapped drug. And if we take that information and plot the permeate, the Cmax versus the permeated amount, we at least get a little bit better in terms of being able to predict what's happening in vivo. but it wasn't perfect. So I could, I'm separating you from lunch, so I make the story a bit shorter. There were other phenomena that needed to be considered. One of the phenomena was that when we look at the solubilization of this surfactant, increase in concentrations from left to right, in transfer buffer, this is a non-micellar medium, we see that what we expect, a higher concentration of surfactant will solubilize more phenofibrate. So that's all clear. When we study this in the facet medium, or also in the facet medium, doesn't matter, we see something that we do not expect because the concentration is going to decrease with increasing surfactant concentration, and then later on, for some surfactants, is going to increase. So we see the opposite of what we expect, the surfactant minimizing the solubility at low concentrations of the drug, and later maximizing. So that information can be also gained from other experiments. For example, if you look at the particle size of the ice-out mixed mice in terms of facet, you see here the scanning electron microscope picture. Actually, it was 10, it was transmission electron microscope. And you see the particle size of the mice cells is about 100 nanometer. If we add now surfactant from the formulation A, which is the good surfactant, there is no change in particle size of the mice cells. If we add the surfactant from formulation F, which was the bad performing formulation, you see all the mice cells have been gone. And so particle size also dramatically decreased, and so did the solubilizing capacity of the medium, because there were no mice cells left. So sometimes you have to dig in a bit more deeper, and if you take that information from the physical-chemical analysis, plus the information from the dissolution permeation assay, we can come up with quite a good prediction for the performance of the different formulations in vitro. And there was just one outlier, and I tell you what that was. That was the phenofibrate nanosuspension, which is physical-chemically much different compared to the solid dispersion or solid solution. We still don't know why this is so, but that has to be resolved by somebody else. So I mentioned the two-stage method for demonstrating the validity or the biopredictivity of your in vitro test method. Now here's another approach that is being used and has been mentioned by Nuno, I believe, before, using PK/PD modeling. So the basic idea is that you have either physical-chemical parameters or PK parameters, or you have biopredictive dissolution curves, like this next box indicated. So here you can start from scratch, from information about the drug, but it's going to be very hard to predict the dissolution of the drug if you don't have any biorelevant media or conditions. So you can also plug in the measured dissolution profiles into the program, assuming that they will be the same like those that are measured in vivo. And then you couple it to an absorption and distribution model, which can be either compartmental or physiological based, and then you can predict the resulting concentrations of that, of those different formulations, and see whether they are similar or whether they are not. So this method has become much more popular in the past. I'll give you one case study on carbamazepine we did some years ago with the Serbian FDA. They were interested to evaluate whether this method can be used to distinguish between bioequivalent and bio-non-equivalent carbamazepine products. So we put all this information into the table. Yes?
We
Are you
have
done?
2 more minutes to
Okay. Well, then I give you the result of this carbamazepine. we found that the 1% SNS solution was the best predictor in a USB2 compared to other media. So we suggested comparative product description doing USB pedal and 1% SNS, and validated that between a number of formulations and laboratories involved. And we are quite sure now that this method that was suggested is biopredictive and can be used to distinguish good from bad carbohydrate products. So with that, I'm at the end and I want to conclude. I think it has become clear that if you want to have biopredictive dissolution methods, you need to have biopredictive tools for that, and that may not be the pharmacopoeia type methods. The traditional method to demonstrate clinical relevance of a dissolution method is a two-stage IVIDC, but there is other ways, depending on whether you need it for regulatory purpose or for internal purpose of formulation or fermentation. You can use also something that may not be yet regulatory accepted. And before, and more recently, alternatives such as PBPK modeling allow successful IVIC development for drug products with more complicated absorption, disposition behavior, for example, enterohepatic circulating drugs. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Peter. Do you think we have time for some questions? It's 2 o'clock. Can we take 2 or 3 questions?
Hello, Peter. I have several questions to you, but I will keep just in one. Do you actually have an SOP for the development of discriminating dissolution methods? Because normally inexperienced companies usually look into the Office of Generic Drugs dissolution methodology that is described, and they adapt it as got. So they think that the described methodology is the most discriminating, and for sure it isn't. So do you have any NSOP on what the type of surfactants to be used, the concentration, or the volume, etc.?
I don't have an SOP. I would also look for a method where I think it is. Can you hear me? Yeah. I would also look for initial suggestion that was on one slide, in the initial best guess. You could try that. The key is more the validation of the method. You can always see is discriminating or it's not discriminating, but then to know whether it should be discriminating or not. That's the more important point. Otherwise, we can be very inventive in terms of what we use as a distribution method. But one conclusion I have from all the years is that there is not one size fits all. It doesn't simply exist. And so you could go with API properties and say, okay, it's well soluble, it's not. You have to have some permeability information and that sort of thing. Then you can say, okay, well, is it going to be a complicated task, which it is typically with class 2 or 4, or is it going to be more easy with class 1 or class 2? But I have no SOP, unfortunately.
We can have another question.
Otherwise, the
go to the final discussion of this morning.
Dr. Hakim, she has one last question.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation, Prof. Peter. But just one question. When you present the in vitro dissolution in this slide, the process, how to conclude the relationship between in vivo and in vitro correlation. You mentioned the in vivo data. This in vitro data should be done by the same, you mean you will do the in vitro all the analysis and the in vivo, and then you go for the correlation, or you can go back to any in vivo available data population or something like that. Thank you.
That's a very, very good question. And I would say I would take any data to build the dissolution model that you have available from the past on this formulation and this API. It can be animal data, it can be human data. Use whatever you have and also what you find in the literature to come up with some learning experience for this project. And I would say also even rat data of the population, when appropriately done, can be very useful. Try to predict what you see in rats, and you can learn a lot for the human situation. Not always, but most of the time. So these data are free, and if they are developed earlier on, use them.
Okay, let's go to the general discussion. I was asked to moderate this general discussion. And you all know that it is very popular in politics to talk about deals. I don't like that because in my eyes politics is not a deal to make deals, but to come to agreements. Therefore I would like to come to an agreement together with you. And my suggestion is I give you, oh no, you give me 10 minutes, I give you 20 minutes. That means let's shorten the general discussion to 10 minutes, then you have another 20 minutes for the coffee, for the lunch break, which will also be a little bit shortened. So this was a very interesting morning presentation and discussion, and I guess I was asked to be the moderator for that. By the way, don't believe that moderator to be moderate. So I understand myself as an active participant and contributor to that. I have 2 points which I would like to address now, and in particular also the chairpersons have the opportunity to contribute, and I'm now the moderator and they are active participants as well. So the first point is, I think it was addressed here and I was not really satisfied with the response. What to do if a study fails due to misperformance of the reference product? This is something we should have in mind. You know that the European guideline says that certain conditions we have to have in mind if 0 or aberrant profiles are observed after administration of the reference product, then these subjects might be excluded. I personally disagree with this reduction to the reference product in such cases where this misperformance is due to physiology in the GI tract. For example, enteric-coated products sometimes remain in the stomach after PET administration for 15 hours and longer. During the night they have the chance to leave the stomach, and this is the same with the reference or the test. So to reduce this exceptional situation only to the reference is inappropriate in my eyes. But there are cases, and I remember a case which has been published by a Canadian CRO at the AFPS conference, annual conference 2 years ago. They showed with the reference product in a number of studies, not a single one, that they misperformed the reference product, very low profiles. So this is what has been mentioned by Anders this morning. So he said, well, let's go for strictly management, quality management system that is only responsible for one study, but if this is shown in several studies, what to do? This is really my question to the authorities. You cannot ignore that. You cannot exclude that. And the applicant has no chance to influence the performance of the reference product. No reformulation can help. Nothing. That occurs due to the performance of the reference product. And we need regulations how to deal with that. In my eyes, this is not perfectly or appropriately regulating the existing guidelines. That's one point. And the second one is reformulation. Peter, when I saw your in vitro in vivo correlation, that's fine. But if there's an in vitro in vivo correlation, how can the study fail? If the products are superimposable in terms of the dissolution, I would expect in vivo same, and probably in the future we could make a bioequivalence study. So what the hell to do with such studies? And last comment from my side, I think it is really a difficult and time-consuming process to understand why a study fails. You have to go into the details, compare the individual profiles, what happened under multiple peaks, is there a delayed absorption phase, etc. Is that gastric residence related, or what happened? Is that formulation related, or is that just by chance that the tablet leaves the stomach a little bit later, and then, or in portions, and then you have multiple peaks. So you will see such an example more in the first presentation. So that is what we need to do. We need to understand the performance. I often say, give the individual plasma profiles the chance to tell you their story, why they behave this way or the other way. And then come to conclusion, and then give an advice to the formulator. Because what should you do if not variability is the issue? Anders carefully explained that. But if there is a product difference, we need guidance how to reformulate that. What is the guidance? If you have a in correlation and they did not meet the requirement, then it's easy. Then follow the in correlation. So, and the final comment, Peter, I was very surprised a little bit that you said that pharmacological procedures sometimes don't give you the best advice. Why did you say sometimes? I think in the majority of cases, they are not at all predicted for the in vivo situation. In particular, if you go for USP with 80% after 45 minutes in 1 liter, etc. So that was just a comment among the two of us. So that was, it's almost 10 minutes, right? But it should be a discussion, so I would like to give you the opportunity to respond.
I'm Lina from KPI. Just like to ask one question regarding the failing bioequivalency. Are you expected to when you do a bioequivalence, are you expected throughout your shelf life of your product to be bioequivalent to the originator? Is this an expectation from regulators or?
I can only respond, even though I'm not a regulator. However, I know some regulatory thinking, and the concept is the following. You show bioequivalence to the innovator. That's the starting point. And then develop a predictive analytical methodology. Sometimes you need more than just one distribution test, but several. And if you meet the specifications, throughout from batch to batch. Your conclusion is the manufactured batch, which is not the bio batch, meeting the specifications is equivalent to the reference as well. And if you hold these requirements until end of shelf life, the conclusion is that even at the end of shelf life, it should also or still be bioequivalent. So that's the concept. We can discuss that, and there are examples where this doesn't hold, but this is a concept. And I don't want to dissolve that concept because otherwise it's a nightmare. Right? Okay. I see agreement from authorities and from Peter as well. Anders, I don't see you. Where's Anders? Ah, there. Could you live with the comment? I'm so interested that he agrees because we need it next year as well.
Well, I'm not sure I can comment on everything, but I can get back to this question about the misbehaving reference product, right? Am I allowed to comment on that? Yes. Yeah. I guess the originator has been granted an approval on basis of clinical efficacy and safety demonstrated with that product. So, to a certain degree, I can see why regulators would not necessarily want to approve a product that is not misbehaving. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I can see a certain degree of logic. But this case is not totally black or white to be. Imagine, like we had this case with the tyrosine kinase inhibitor, where 5%, I don't remember how many, 5% of the population basically have zero response with the reference product. And they have adequate clinical efficacy and safety. Perhaps they might not display the same clinical safety or something if they don't have these misbehaving ingestions once in a while. I simply don't know. It's a ridiculously difficult, tricky question to deal with. Wasn't there a case in France 3 years ago, levothyroxine something, the French regulator demanded a reformulation from a company, and they reformulated, showed bioequivalence, and suddenly there were a lot of adverse events. Something like that, it's from the top of my head. So forcing an originator into reformulating is also not always a solution. At least history has been kind of proof to companies doing that. So I'm one big question mark. And can you please ask some easier questions? That would make my life much easier, please.
No, but for all of you here, I think this question was not raised by myself. It was raised from the audience, and I'm fully on her side. And I said, well, and therefore I said I was not so satisfied with the response, because this is an issue and this is a problem. I understand that the innovator product has been approved based on efficacy and safety data, for sure. And the consequence, if this is identified, the consequence would be for us, the innovator, to reformulate the product. And that is obviously a very difficult step for the authorities to go as far, even though, based on the data which has been published by the Canadian CRO, from I think 6 studies, full replicate design and conventional two-way crossover studies, is very impressive and needs consequences in my eyes. But I understand that it's difficult to achieve that. So I would like to, so now we get the discussion. The gentleman first. Last word for you before the lunch break. Ladies first, or no, neither.
Just a comment regarding the discussion that I'm not saying that it's a problem of reference or a real order or whatever. My point of view is that each case of bioequivalence or bioinequivalence is really a study case. And really we need to look through, as you mentioned, all the details in order to conclude that we are bioequivalent or bioinequivalent. And really we have cases where we repeat the reference product many times and still we end up with the same conclusion. So I know I don't have the authority to go there and to the reference, please change and change again. But the story that when I discussed any bio study or I have a case study, I need to discuss thoroughly and to understand that there are many factors beyond the failure of the study or the success or the passage of the study. That's really my point of view. Thank you.
So I remember that the time when we started discussing appropriate methodologies for highly variable drugs. And one of the arguments in those days was it could be a strategy for an innovator to make the product as variable as possible. Yes, that was a discussion point. And the conclusion was we cannot request more restrictive requirements from a generic manufacturer than from the originator. Therefore, this replicate design study concept was developed.
So regarding the reference being very variable, right? We hear about it, but do we see the data? Probably not as much. So if you all, as the CROs, are having that data and you're sitting on it, right? We, as regulators, we want to look at the full study before we can even do something about it. But there are no signals in the market regarding the safety or the efficacy of the drug, other than CROs telling us, okay, it's like variable. But this kind of information is never submitted. So if you guys are sitting on it, and you think if there is truly an issue, although again we don't see anything in the market, like signals from the market, then there's something that we need to work together on.
And I will definitely do that. I don't think we should use the time here. And I only mentioned that because I'm by chance involved in such a study when I saw the data. We were not as a CRO involved there, and I saw the data. And I said, well, if this happens in one study, it's very difficult to draw conclusions. But then I found this, and I remember this presentation of 6 studies by a Canadian CRO with the same reference product, indicating the same. So we can share that information, and I'm very interested in your response. So, sorry, it's okay. I'm already more than 10 minutes, but I have a last question or comment.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I worked for MHRA for 11 years as a senior assistant. We've been seeing many cases where the reference product is actually varies in composition. Within EU itself, there are more than one sites. I don't know, why do you think that the reference product will be consistent all over the world? It's not. And that, I think one of the professors is going to tell us about the choice of the reference product. And I'll tell you, this is a very hot subject in discussion within any regulatory authority, when they actually, the company will approach us to ask which reference product to use. And then we have to get into dialogue with them and to discuss all aspects, including where is it coming from. From EU, by the way, I keep talking about EU because I'm an EU member, I'm EU MHRA ex-assessor, and I keep talking about MHRA. We discuss with the applicant which reference product we think will be fit and best for that particular study. And believe it or not, sometimes we go into a dispute with another EU member state because they don't want that reference product and we don't want that reference product. And I remember very well, one of the companies applying that to us, and I was involved in this, they were looking for a reference product that would be acceptable to the concerned member states. They were concerned with the state, when you submit decentralized application. And we didn't agree. And he couldn't submit. And then you have draw application. Because we are not going to agree on that particular. So there are so many things about the reference project. I'm sure the professor will tell us more about it. And last thing, Professor, I attended a biopharmaceutical studies in London 2014. And again, it was organized by FDA in collaboration with NHRA. And this is exactly the same subject. We couldn't agree on the definition of the acceptable reference concept for the bioequivalence study. And still, the idea of how can you control the quality of the reference product is still an ongoing topic. It is very hard. The professor thinks that you need to go to the innovator, which is very hard, because all the clinical studies and the safety and efficacy all related to the reference product. And you are, as a generic, try to claim exactly the same studies as the reference based on their study. So it will be a bit hard even to actually to consider to go to the reference product to say, my generic is better than yours. This is not a question, and I've heard that from many generic companies to say, my product is better than reference. Sorry guys, this is the reference, you are copying it. And I think the FDA agree with me as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think now you have enough to digest during the lunch break, but in particular enjoy lunch. And please